watching Property TV. In this episode of Business Success with Graeme and Leanne Carling, the couple are travelling from their home in Dubai to London, where they are meeting with a world-renowned businessman and philanthropist. The man they will be meeting was the founder of a company that grew from 0 stores to over 600 and was subject to an exit worth over £1 billion. He now concentrates on his charitable endeavours, including setting up his own charity, Cauldwell Children. This man is, of course, John Caudwell. Together, they will be discussing all things business, including what it takes to grow a successful business and how and when to exit. You are watching Business Success. Welcome back to Business Success. Since the last episode, a lot has changed for Graeme and Leanne Carling, who have continued their acquisition trail to acquire a further 3 businesses and increase the group turnover to £70 million, all whilst contending with the global pandemic. The couple have also moved their home from Dundee, Scotland to Dubai. In this journey, the couple have immersed themselves in new networks, including meeting billionaire and philanthropist John Caudwell, who they will be seeing today at his London home. We caught up with the couple in their London office before meeting with John.
We go back to the start, before we even first started our first business. You know, in terms of mentors or people that we look up to and listen to and learn from, it's very much been people that have been significantly greater than where we were, where we are even still. So, but we want to be there. So we're listening and learning and really taking in, success leaves clues, as they say. So we want to be in the environment of people that have been ultra and uber successful. And not just in the past though, with people that are on it and working at it every day, because that's the type of people that we are. We love business, we love entrepreneurship, and people like John Caudwell. I mean, everybody knows how successful he's been and still is. He's well known now for his philanthropy, but very much still, in a big business, and that kind of gets forgotten because he wishes to be seen or be remembered as a philanthropist, but very much an entrepreneur in every sense of the word. And we just love being around people like that and being in environments like that, don't we? What I want to ask John is, was it always his plan and intention when he was starting out to grow and sell and exit the businesses? Or was that something that just came up, he got to a certain size and scale and the opportunity to sell the business came up?
I always think if you have, I'm one, never have a plan B.
Right.
You always work and focus on plan A. Yeah. Because if you've got a plan B probably won't work. So I always think just focus on plan A and don't have a get out of jail card, Focus on plan A. So that is a good question. So
I just wonder, if it was always the plan A, or was it that an offer came in that was just so fantastic? And what was the emotions then? What was what was going through your mind at that point? I mean, I can imagine at the numbers, the billions we're talking about, it had been pretty exciting, no matter who you are. So I just wonder, what it was like, wonder what that process was like, how it happened. Was it part of the plan? And really, for me, I'm really excited to hear about that and what he was thinking he was going to do after that also. We're buyers of businesses, and so we deal with a lot of emotions from sellers. and we've seen many of it, as particularly family businesses that have maybe been 2 or 3 generations old and are now selling to us, and we see a huge range of emotion, mainly fear, that is driven by it. So for us, we're kind of, as the buyers, we're less emotional on it because we haven't spent 50 years or 100 years building up the business, but we still want to get the deal done, and we're still keen on that. So we haven't exited. So I'm keen to understand that from John, what that process really feels like from him at a huge level.
At a huge level, because we have exited on a lower level.
Yeah, we've exited some smaller businesses that weren't painful or weren't emotional enough. We don't have any emotional scars, or we didn't have. They were part of the process. But I think for us now, as we're growing our businesses, it would be interesting if something ever came along out the blue, for us, where it gave us a shake and say, well, hold on, you have something to consider here. Here's an offer that we'd like to make to you, because that's not in our plan. That's not in our plan. Our plan is to build the businesses through acquisition and organic growth, take as large a geography as we can. And down here in the heart of Mayfair, it's just a fantastic vibe, and a great place to do business. I'm looking forward to this evening. Yep.
Graeme and Leanne have come to the heart of London, to Mayfair in the borough of Westminster, where John Caudwell lives. As the co-founder of Phones for You, John started off in 1987 as a mobile phone wholesaler with just 26 mobiles, and grew the business to one that eventually sold in 2006 for over £1.5 billion. Since then, John has largely dedicated his time to philanthropic causes, setting up his own charities such as Cauldwell Children, which is dedicated to improving the lives of disabled children in the UK. Ultimately, John has pledged to give away 70% of his wealth in his lifetime, and is encouraging other successful entrepreneurs to do so too. Today, John and his partner Modesta have invited Graeme and Leanne to his London home, which is now regarded as the most expensive house in Britain after famously merging 2 London mansions into one 43,000 square foot property. The first question Graeme and Leanne had for John was, where did it all start?
Yeah, for me, I suppose, I've been asked that question 1,000 times and I can't quite be sure, but I think it kicked off because I came from a very, very poor background, and my grandmother always told me of all the Cauldwell ancestry that were all successful and wealthy. And she put these ideas, I think, of grandeur in my head that I didn't think about it at that time, but I think that sort of subliminally implanted in me that I wanted to be successful. But at the same time, and I don't know why this was, I had this vision. I was only 7 years old, and I had this vision of of driving around in a Rolls Royce, which was the car that my father said was unbelievable. So I had this vision, and it was so clear. It was so clear, and it was a weird vision for a 7-year-old to have. Imagine that, driving around in a Rolls Royce, chauffeur-driven Rolls Royce, giving £5 notes out to people. That was my version of being rich and successful and charitable, and that actually lived with me as really a bit of a sort of a Damocles sword for the rest of my childhood and later on in life, because I felt somehow that was my absolute destiny, and that had to happen. There was no choice. It had to happen. So imagine the pressure that a lad from the Terry streets of Shelton felt, Stoke-on-Trent, and then lived on a council estate in a 2-bedroom flat. Imagine the pressure on that person when they feel they've got to become this rich philanthropic person. And my whole life was then spent doing silly things, trying to find a way of making money, like breeding white worms in the garage that all died, and trading embassy coupons, and anything that, when I look back, really stupid. But in a way it wasn't, because every one of these little stupid failed ventures, they didn't fail, but they just didn't make any money, taught me a lesson. So by the time I was 16 or 17, I'd already learnt lots of lessons that some people never learn their whole lives. So although it was stupid, it was a lesson. You know, and it did build. My analytical mind was looking at all these things all the time and saying, "That's crazy. What have you done that for? That can't ever do any good." And then I realised I got to have something scalable. So I guess the same question to you, really. How did you come to desire to be successful and rich?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting one. I think, you know, people ask the question, you know, is it something that, to become an entrepreneur, is it something that you're born with, or is it something that you can learn? And it's a tricky question, you know, and I think I was, certainly for me, it was something I've just always had it, similar to what you're saying, in different ways, you know, washing cars at 7-year-old, paper rounds, milk delivery rounds, all of that stuff, but always looking to try and
always got this entrepreneurial money-making spirit.
Always. And to you know, even going through school, I never had the desire to grow up, you know, get good grades and get a job. It just didn't have it for me. I always wanted to, I suppose, run my own business, whatever that may be, but just knowing, without really understanding it, it just was there. And so I've done various ventures over the years. And then even though I did go into mainstream employment, I always felt like a square peg, even though I was good at it, if I committed to it, but really always looking to
It's funny you should say about a square peg, you know, because I went on to A levels, which I knew wasn't my destiny, because I knew I didn't want to do ordinary education. And I bailed out after 3 months and applied to Michelin Tire Company. I think there was about 1,500 applicants and only 60 of us were going to get the job. Right. So it was a really, really challenging thing to get the job. And I was lucky, I got the job. But I always, to your point, felt like a square peg, because everybody else was career minded, and I knew my career was never going to be in engineering, although I don't regret doing it. It was a wonderful training, but it was never going to be in engineering. It was never going to be working for anybody else. And I knew that, although I'd got no idea how to break out of it. So I absolutely understand the square, feeling like a square peg.
You are watching Property TV. You are watching Property TV.
So we'd started, you know, again, educating ourselves, if you like. And I'd actually, back in 2000, I had 3 failed businesses. So I'd started this before.
What, failed as in lost money and...
lost money.
Administration.
No, I mean, they weren't big enough for that.
So failed, but left difficulty.
Big lessons. Yeah, I mean, it was, I'd lost my own money and I'd lost...
Yeah.
But they were never...
I did the same, actually. I lost my money.
Yeah.
Not much. I hadn't got much to lose, but I had those lessons,
Yeah, so we'd had... And so I think after the third one, it, you know, really, you know, it lost my money, ego dented, pride dented, licking my wounds, and had to go back to mainstream employment. And that was around 2002-03. So I had to reset, I had to recover, and it took me a few years. Then when the 2007 market crash came, and we'd been studying the property market and looking at opportunities should they arise. And so when the market crashed and everyone was getting out, that was a good time for us to get in.
So did you get the cash to do that?
Well, we didn't have much cash, and that was the thing. When we quit our jobs, we had enough cash to live on for six months. But what we were able to do, and at the time, this was in the halcyon days of the good old Northern Rock, and when the money was easier to get than certainly it is now, we were able to buy properties and refinance quickly. So we were buying them at a discount.
So you were able to borrow money even post-crash?
Well, for a while doing this.
Crash.
Yeah, it was between 2007 and 8. So it was probably we had about a year period.
Yeah, it went soft.
Things
went soft.
Yeah, it went soft.
But not crash, though, it went soft.
Then it crashed. Yeah. Then things had to change. So during that period was when we got in. So unfortunately, we got in right at the tail end. We wish we'd have started, you know, a good few years earlier when money was easier to get.
Yeah, but then you might have been bankrupted by the
right.
crash.
Yeah, and
a lot of people went under as a result of that crash.
Yeah, and we bought many of their assets actually when they went down. We were able to pick them up.
Same.
Yeah. So that was kind of how it started for us, and we just kept reinvesting the money into acquiring properties and just built up a portfolio that.
So you're a developer or
No, well, we do
investment properties? Or
yeah, residential properties.
Residential investment?
Residential investment properties, yeah.
So you rent residential?
Yes.
In Scotland?
In Scotland, yep. Yeah. So we built that up over a period of time, and during that period, what we were able to identify was a demographic whereby people on low income. It's not low income housing we have. We have sort of middle of the road, nothing fancy, but not
affordable.
Yeah, affordable. So there was a big
unfurnished.
Unfurnished, yeah, mainly unfurnished. But we do some. It was mainly letting properties at affordable rates, whereby a number of the tenants may not have had. They might have had bad credit, weren't able to. They didn't fit the conventional box for getting a tenancy. So we took a bit of a gamble with that demographic, and it worked for us because.
What sort of yield were you getting back then?
We were getting. I mean, we were targeting double-digit yield, but anything above 8 is what we do.
How many properties have you got?
We've got 350 plus units. Yeah, we've got. So we have
mostly flats. Or?
Yeah, mostly flats. We have student accommodation.
Oh, student. Yeah, that's good, isn't it? Student.
Yeah. So we have a mixture, but I mean, we kind of pivoted out.
That's a big business you've grown, isn't it? In what, 10 years?
Yeah,
or a bit more.
But yeah, it was a bit more. And we haven't actually bought anything substantial because we kind of diverted into building services companies, which almost is, looking after the properties. So we moved.
So you're building managers as well.
Yeah. So we now.
So you do all the management services for apartment blocks and things like that.
We do, and we do a lot of it for the local government now and housing associations.
Ah, very good.
So the companies look after the buildings. That was.
So no cash outlay and no risk.
Yeah. Well, low risk. Yeah.
Low
risk. Yeah.
Well, there's probably no such thing as no risk, but compared to a lot of things, it's no risk.
Yeah.
So you built an amazing property portfolio in quite a short time, but, and I'm interested in your view on the but.
Yeah.
It's very difficult at a property to end up with any multiple on the business you sell. Yeah. Although I believe you're managing properties now, which gives you quality of earnings.
Yeah.
But have you sort of thought about that you make your short-term profits, but what about your multiple if you come to exit?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And I think particularly the residential market that we're in, we found that.
Shush, boy.
Whilst we were able to make a reasonable income, a multiple at the end basically wasn't there. So we diverted out of property, and we see, and now we've been doing it for a number of years now, far better multiples and opportunities in the business sector. So we've really.
So you're gradually transforming your business to give a quality of earnings that gives a multiple, so that there's an exit. Rather than just taking net asset value, you end up with the multiple. And that is the big thing about, I think, any business. And people have asked me, what would you go into now? And I would only ever go into World Wide Web.
Okay,
It would have to be something that was globalized.
Yes.
I'm not that interested in making money anymore, really, but if I was going to do it, it would have to be something I could globalize, something that I could put a really high tech value on, so that not only is it globalized for massive expansion, but also you've got this high quality of earnings, so you can get a huge multiple. I mean, look at some of the businesses today selling on multiples of 200 or 300. I mean, to me it seems ludicrous, but I mean, I sold my business on a multiple of 8, even though it was in the mobile phone business. But I think for me, any business would have to be capable of carrying a high multiple, and part of that is having a high growth factor. And if you can get the high growth factor in a sexy industry, then you get the high multiple and you can make a fortune out of that. And that's what the kids are doing today, isn't it? In application software and everything. They're just making colossal money, much easier than you are doing at the moment, much easier than I ever did. You started converting your business into a multiple, a business with potential of multiple selling, rather than just net asset sales. So is that on your horizon at some point that you'd like to sell?
Yeah, I think that's the plan for us. I mean, to go and we're looking to, it's a complete opposite to the property side. And we kind of naively didn't, we weren't thinking far enough ahead with the properties. It was always our intention to buy and hold, keep for the income, in perpetuity, if you like. But certainly for a while, it wasn't. There was no exit in our plan, really. And
for the
but when we
I guess the thing is, when you'd made a bit of money, you know, you get smarter and smarter, don't you? You know, you made some money, and that,
yes.
it's no longer about, well, have I made enough money to live? It's then about, well, how can I really build this business into something worthwhile, long-term and saleable?
Yes. And John, for you, was that your, I mean, when you were starting, you know, your businesses, was it always with, I mean, did you get that early in terms of multiples and exit?
No.
Was that something?
No. At first, it was only about building financial security.
Yeah.
Then when I got financial security, I wanted wealth.
Yep.
And then when I got wealth, I wanted reputation and more wealth, but with reputation, I wanted to build something that I was proud of.
Yeah.
And then the dream of this 7-year-old that was going to be charitable, sort of, I knew I could afford it.
Yeah.
And then I became extremely focused on charity as well.
Mm-hmm.
But in the last probably 15 years, quality of earnings to enhance the multiple and enhance the chances of selling the business were crucial.
Mm.
So I didn't do anything for short-term profit. Everything I did was for long-term quality.
Right.
So that any buyer would see a really quality business,
Yeah.
quality run, with an amazing reputation, great people,
Yeah.
and therefore would give me the multiple that I desired.
Okay.
Not that I was thinking of selling, but you know what sort of happened was the mobile phone business matured to a point where I was worried about the future. But at the same time, I was predicting a big recession in the UK, and I was feeling like that in 2002. So the big recession didn't come in the UK alone, it came in the world, and it came quite some years later. But it actually started coming in 2006. It's just that people didn't recognise it was coming off. But it was coming off because all the mezzanine debt that was being put into private equity was beginning to evaporate. And you could sense, you know, house prices too high. You could sense that there's a huge bubble building up. I mean, I'm not saying I forecast or saw the financial bubble as it ended up being, but I certainly saw a bubble in the UK that was a risk to my business. And I started increasingly thinking, do you know, I'd better sell this. Right. It's time to sell.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and then it was like, well, I'm selling my identity, because that business I grew from one person to 12,000 people, you know, from no turnover to 2.4 billion. Yeah. And it was my identity. And I'd got some amazing employees who are still in touch with me today, you know, and just regularly say, do you know, you were the toughest boss I could ever imagine working for, but you taught me so much that I'm now successful. And they're chief executive of, in one case, of a publicly listed company, a FTSE 100. Mm. So I bred a lot of people that were extremely successful, and that was very, very, very rewarding. Yeah. And that became my driving force, really, you know, it changes, doesn't it? You're probably like that now, you know, you've made your money. I bet it's not just pure money that motivates you now. I bet the other things are coming in.
Yeah, yeah. And when you were going through the sale process, emotionally, what was that like at the time?
Well, it was tricky because my business was complicated. It was 20 companies all the way across the whole breadth of mobile phones, everything. We were the world's biggest distributor of handsets, the world's biggest distributor of accessories. We were the UK's biggest air service provider with 2 million customers. It was really a tricky sale. In fact, I threw 2 buyers out because I knew they were messing me about. Right. I knew they were filibustering me and taking me down a pathway. I could just sense it. Mm-hmm. And my advisors were horrified because I threw this company out altogether. But I knew it was going to go nowhere. Right. And in any event, I thought, well, I'll throw them out. If it's really going to go somewhere, they're going to clamour to get back in. Yeah. If they don't clamour to get back in, I was right, and they didn't. Yeah. So I had a really difficult sale process. It took over a year.
Okay. Yeah.
And I believe we got out probably in the only month we ever could in terms of lateness, which was September 2006. Because I talked about mezzanine debt going. Yeah. Private equity companies were buying companies and they were putting as little as 7 or 8, 9% of their own money in. The rest was main primary lending and then mezzanine debt. So they got no skin in the game. You know, if they won big because they got all that huge return on let's say a 10% investment. Yeah. If they lost 10%.
Yeah.
So the bet was disproportionate.
Yeah.
And that was another way I knew there was going to be an explosion, because it was ridiculous that that was the way that business was done.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got it away on that September date, and you know, it was a strange sensation, because it was like selling my identity and selling my baby that had grown into an adult.
Yeah.
So it was a strange sensation, but quite a relief as well, because I'd lived for 20 years on the edge of a precipice in many ways, because it was such a dynamic, aggressive, hard business where everybody wanted to kill you.
Right.
Your suppliers, your customers, and your competitors.
Yeah.
So you got no happy relationship anywhere. Everybody wanted to kill you, which is not a good place to be.
That sounds familiar as well. Yeah. So from selling your babies to helping babies, John, you're at the Cauldwell Children.
Well, I eventually I did start Cauldwell Children actually in 2000
Okay.
But when I sold the business, it enabled me to do much more charity work across the piece.
Yeah.
And to grow Cauldwell Children. And charity just became an absolute passion. Yeah. It's what really motivates me in life. I was at Bomber Command Memorial for the commemorative ceremony on Sunday, meeting the old veterans. There's very few left now. In fact, there's only 3 there. One from Poland, the only veteran from the Polish Air Force, and 2 from the UK. And it's emotionally, for me, extremely, extremely valuable. You know, I can't get that same feeling, no matter what I do in life. I can't get the same feeling as helping other people.
Yeah.
And in Cauldwell Children, we've helped 60,000 kids. And some of those kids have gone on to really have a really special life. Like one child with type 2 muscular atrophy, little Tilly. Muscular atrophy takes all the muscles away from your whole body, and we supplied her with a wheelchair when she was 4. £20,000 for these wheelchairs, but it transforms that child's life. And 2 years ago, just before COVID, I met her in San Francisco at her university and took her for a coffee. And she's on the wheelchair, in the wheelchair with a little joystick, and I'm cycling down the road, and we go to Starbucks, and she's only in one of the most credited universities in the world, and she won a scholarship to it.
Okay.
And things like that make my hair stand on end. No business deal, and I am a business adrenaline junkie, but no business deal could ever, to me, feel like that. It can't, because the spiritual satisfaction of knowing you've helped a child have a real special life that would have had no life is priceless.
That's it for this episode, but tune in next time for Business Success with Graeme and Leanne Carling.